Good morning. You found us here on the weather desk. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller, broadcasting from the 13 News Now studios, serving Southeast Virginia and Northeast North Carolina. But through the power of our 13 News Now app and streaming, of course, we have reach all across the country and all around the world. And that's a good thing, because here on the weather desk, we don't just focus on what's happening in Hampton Roads. We talk about stories from around the country and around the world, sometimes space, weather, climate stories, all kinds of good stuff. But we always look to tackle today's top weather headlines. All right, want to start off with our topics today, some of the big stories that caught our attention this morning. It is Wednesday, November the 19th, and we have more mountain snow to talk about out west. Ski resorts loving it up in the Sierras and California. I'm telling you, Monmouth, that's where we're going today to check that area out. We have some really sad news from the Patagonia region of Chile. There was a deadly Chilean winter storm. We'll talk about that and what was going on. In addition to that, we have conditions across the country that are looking pretty interesting. We'll get into the national weather and talk about some areas that could see some more flooding issues here later today. We're going to also talk internationally about what's going on in Vietnam, landslides there. You think about the incredible amounts of rain that they had with tropical systems within the last month or so, and that has loosened up a lot of the land there and some of the features kind of giving away, allowing for mudslides and landslides, and that has been a big problem. So we'll check in with that. Also, Cuba recovering 3 weeks after Melissa made landfall. Remember, yesterday marked 3 days since Jamaica was hit with Melissa, and then it crossed Jamaica, came across the straits, and hit Cuba today, 3 weeks ago. So we'll let you know how Cuba's doing. I know there was one town still without power, and folks in that area were just really getting frustrated, and understandably so. So we'll get you an update there. And then a couple really interesting stories a little later in the show. If you could stay with us, we're going to talk about a new study with a Florida university suggesting there could be never-ending mosquito seasons for parts of the U.S. You think about that. Wet and warm conditions, the climate kind of shifting a little bit, making it harder to kill off some of those vectors. You know, we rely on some of the colder winters to knock down those mosquitoes and pests during the colder months. And when you don't get them, it leads to these other issues. So we're going to talk about the never-ending mosquito season that could be developing, and the great question, to rake or not to rake. We'll take a look. Color really coming in here in Hampton Roads and for parts of the southeast. It's past peak. A lot of the trees to the north and out west have already fallen, but we do have trees that are shedding their leaves as we speak. And the question, to rake or not to rake, we'll break it down. We'll let you know about that. Again, more on our local forecast as well. So let's start off with a look at what was going on out in California. You can see the rain has shifted a little farther to the east. Remember, we had that atmospheric river bringing in a tremendous amount of moisture for California. Flood issues over the past couple of days and late last week, and there was eventually some pretty heavy snow back over the mountains. You take a look at the loop here, and you can see the snow over the Sierras. And as we zoom in, I specifically want to get in to Mammoth Lakes and the Mammoth Ski Resort. This area here saw a lot of snow. You can see how it plays out this morning, but let's take you back in time, and you can see how the snow is reaching this area and back over the mountain. So let's go ahead and talk about this, where the snow had been falling for parts of California just in time for the ski resorts to open for the season. Check this out. This is a look at conditions at Mammoth Mountain yesterday. This is about an hour and a half away from the Nevada state line. Now, Mammoth Mountain reported up to 16 inches of snow in just hours, and they've received almost 3 feet, about 32 inches since Sunday. Even more snow will be possible later this week, which again is welcome news for skiers and snowboarders who plan to start hitting the slopes soon. All right, I want to take you back to the satellite images, and I just wanted to show you something here. I'm over where I can manipulate this. I'm going to bring it back a little bit and show you the visible satellite images. What you're seeing with this loop here, I can shuttle back and forth. You're seeing infrared and the satellite, the visible satellite pictures, when I remove the infrared images, you can see these areas showing up with the white here over the map. That is snow that is visible from the satellite. So you can see, again, these areas got a lot of snow back out over the mountains. Really pretty to see that. But when you take a look at the infrared images, sometimes it's hard to pick that out. But I was noticing with the visible satellite pictures, you see how I shuttle it back and forth, and those areas brightest on some of those mountaintops don't really change. That's a sign that is the visible satellite images picking up that snow. I thought that was pretty cool, and I wanted to share that with you. All right, where it has not been so cool as far as the snow and the impacts, we're going to take you down to South America, and let's focus on that just so I can show you. Again, here's Chile, and we're going to go down to the Patagonia region, way far to the south, and it was this area where at least 5 tourists have been killed by a snowstorm in Chile. This happened while they were visiting Torre del Paine National Park, and they were with a tour guide. That's down, as I mentioned, in the Patagonia region. Now, at least 4 more tourists have been found alive. 2 of those who died were from Mexico, 2 were from Germany, and 1 was a woman from Britain. We're told they had been stranded in the area for about 4 to 5 hours away from the closest accessible point by car. So they were out and away. Parts of the national park are now closed while rescue crews work on a plan to retrieve the bodies. 24 first responders, including teams from the National Police and Army, have been deployed to help with recovery efforts, but harsh weather conditions have slowed those teams down as they're dealing with heavy snowfall and winds up to 118 miles per hour. That's like a Category 3 hurricane. So very, very difficult conditions for them to deal with in Chile. All right, we're now going to turn our attention all the way across the Pacific and back over to Vietnam. Of course, a lot of time, several days, we covered stories here on the Weather Desk talking about some of the tropical impacts here with storms and typhoons moving across the Philippines. And there were a couple with some really major impacts across parts of Vietnam and Cambodia, Laos. We talked about some of those impacts. But I want to come back to Vietnam because this area has really been reeling. They had that record rainfall a few weeks ago, and then they had the tropical systems on top of it. It's a central part of the country that is once again dealing with the heavier rain, which triggered deadly landslides. On Sunday, one of those landslides buried a passenger bus moving through the Conlay Mountain Pass, which is a winding 20-mile stretch popular with tourists. It took rescue crews hours to reach that bus. We know at least 6 people died and 19 others are hurt. About 50 miles away, another landslide left 1 person dead and another injured. The threat for landslides isn't over yet. Central Vietnam is expected to get up to 33 inches of rain this week, and you can see this next cluster of storms again drifting towards southern Vietnam. So this whole area very much charged right now from all the heavy rain, and it has been really, really tough. All right, so we talked about that. I want to bring you back over to Cuba because today marks 3 weeks since Hurricane Melissa made landfall in Cuba. Now, remember, that system came ashore. It had weakened from that Category 5 status when it moved across Jamaica. When it came into Cuba, it was a Category 3, but still a major hurricane. So a powerful impact to Cuba. And even now, weeks later, thousands of Cubans are still without power. This is a look at people who live near Santiago de Cuba using fallen trees and electrical poles to block a highway in protest, demanding their electricity be restored. At one point, the director of the Cuban Electric Union showed up trying to persuade residents to clear the road. Cuban officials say more than 700,000 people were forced to evacuate coastal areas before Hurricane Melissa. More than 50,000 of them have not yet been able to return home, including almost 8,000 who are still in shelters. Tough situation there. All right, we're quickly going to check out the rest of the tropics. As you know, we still technically have another week and a half or so of the hurricane season. Fortunately, as we look ahead, there is nothing significant happening in the Caribbean. Little bit of unsettled weather down around Panama, but nothing showing any signs of development. The Gulf, almost, I was going to say clear as a bell. There are just a couple clouds there, not far from the Florida Keys, but basically it is clear in the Gulf. Up along the southeast U.S. coast, things look good here. We do have this storm system coming off of the Jersey coast. I'll talk more about that when we get into our local forecast. But across the main development region, nothing happening and nothing expected in the eastern Pacific. So for the next 7 days, no tropical activity expected. And as I mentioned, the official end of the hurricane season ends at the end of this month. So we're almost done with that. Thank goodness. All right, you can see with the sky view, the sun is shining. We had some wet weather earlier. Things are getting better for us across the area. 58 degrees, winds are west-southwest at 9 miles per hour. We're going to talk more about our local forecast. But after this 2-minute break, we're going to get back to a couple of stories I think folks are really going to be interested in. One, the possibility of a never-ending mosquito season. We'll let you know what parts of the U.S. may be looking at that. And your lawn is probably covered in leaves at this point. Well, we asked an expert whether you should rake them up or leave them on the ground. We'll have the answers after this 2-minute break. All right, welcome back to the Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller. It's great to have you with us. As we take a look nationally, you can see we have some unsettled weather, a little bit of rain up in North Dakota, headed over to Minnesota, some snow showers around the Arrowhead and up into Canada. We had rain come through with an area of low pressure swinging off the Jersey coast. A little bit of snow earlier across central parts of Pennsylvania. Also some snow over western Montana, back into northern Idaho. As you can see, southern Utah into Arizona. Some unsettled weather there and back across New Mexico. Most of the southern U.S. and along the Gulf Coast, pretty quiet. These areas here in the southwest U.S. still capable of producing some excess rainfall. And as we take a look here, again, showers over West Texas around El Paso, extending up through eastern portions of New Mexico. Phoenix seeing some showers, moisture streaming in across the Baja and then back up into Arizona as we go this morning. Now, I'll show you there is some potential for excessive rain. There's level 1 threat of flash flooding from Arizona, southern Arizona and southern New Mexico, basically south of Albuquerque through El Paso and back over to just southeast of Las Vegas. But it's this area here in Texas that I'm a little more concerned with. There's a level 2 threat of excessive rainfall. And remember that tragic flooding in Kerrville there in Texas with the camps that were washed away, that taking place on the 4th of July. So anytime you get into excessive rain potential for that part of the Lone Star State, I know people, the anxiety comes up a little bit. I can tell you the level 2 threat basically from Uvalde back down to Del Rio, Rock Springs, Sonora, all included with this level 2 threat for excessive rainfall. Excessive rainfall, always something we look for when there's standing water out there that can lead to, a breeding ground for mosquitoes. You combine those areas with a lot of moisture, a lot of rain on the ground or wet conditions, and you get warmer temperatures, and that combination can really support the breeding and spread of mosquitoes. Well, with it being almost winter, you would typically think mosquito season comes to an end. At least for most of us here across Hampton Roads, once we get these freezes, they're done. But for other parts of the United States, it's a different story. Researchers at Florida International University say warming temperatures, heavier rainfall, and longer summers have created conditions where mosquito seasons could essentially become never-ending. Those conditions have allowed disease-carrying species to survive year-round in some parts of the U.S., especially southern Florida. Scientists there are now working to understand why certain illnesses carried by mosquitoes, such as dengue, have become more common in pockets of Miami. Researchers are also focused on 2 specific species.
We do not have to create a world without mosquitoes. We just need to focus on the mosquitoes that bite humans. And they're out of the 3,500 or so species, there's only a few that really like us. So we need to deal with them.
So for some reason, there's a tendency for these diseases to go in particular areas. We are trying to study really hard the ecology, the species composition of those areas to find out what is so specific about them that these diseases tend to be transmitted in specific areas, okay? So that is part of the research we are doing, because as soon as we understand that, we'll be able to counteract it. In other words, we can outsmart the mosquitoes.
Well, this research comes after dengue, a disease long associated with tropical countries, was recently found to be locally transmitted in parts of the U.S. for the first time ever. When we talk about climate change, one of the big things we talk about is, again, vectors or different things like insects or maybe rodents, different species that can carry different diseases and other issues can spread to warmer climates where typically they weren't reaching those areas. Now some of that stuff spreading a little farther north. And right now it's South Florida. What was considered really a tropical issue is spreading now into the southern U.S. So it is certainly something we will be paying close attention to as we get more information. Again, it's interesting research, but a never-ending mosquito season sounds terrible. Here's what we have for you across the southern tier of the U.S. It is pretty warm right now. Most of the country to the north, though, cool. Certainly cool to the northeast. We've been chilly for the past couple of days, but today temperatures getting back up to normal. And you can see right now 58 in Norfolk. A southwest wind has driven our temperatures up here locally. All right, we're going to turn our attention from these temperatures to the latest fall foliage. Look at this. We are past peak for probably 2/3 or so of the country. Much of the country already has seen the transition with the colors and a lot of the leaves coming down. Here in Hampton Roads, as we zoom in, you're going to see we have high color to peak color from the eastern shore, the northern neck, middle peninsula, the peninsula, the western parts, the interior parts or inland areas across the south side and northeast North Carolina. High color for the metro area and areas just to the east. We have moderate to high color coming in right now all the way to the coast. So as we enjoy fall right now, won't be long if you do have some of those beautiful trees and the colors that we see those leaves falling. All right, you're probably seeing some areas already covered with leaves. And if you haven't raked them up yet, there may be a case for keeping them on the ground. Megan Bragg with our sister station in Charlotte spoke with an expert.
Leaves start to fall on your lawn. Should you rake them up or keep them on the ground? Matt Betts with the Davy Tree Charlotte office says when it comes to leaves falling, they can act like a fertilizer if you keep them on the ground.
Their natural decay kind of acts as a fertilizer, so that's going to help those trees. It's also a habitat for animals and pollinators and all that stuff.
The National Audubon Society also says the leaves are important because when they rot, they enrich the soil, which provides places for bugs and birds to forage for food. However, there are times you'll want to rake them up.
You don't want to have leaves all over your grass, especially after we aerate and seed, because then the seed's not going to germinate. So you need to rake up those. Betts says to put those leaves at the base of the trees or in the places where there is mulch instead. If you're headed out to clean up, the Cleveland Clinic recommends stretching first and wearing clothes that give you a good range of motion to avoid back pain.
All right, some good advice there. We're going to turn our attention to the forecast here for Hampton Roads. A lot of sunshine today, temperatures in the low 60s and then falling off a little bit later as we get into the afternoon. Little unusual temperature profile with the high temperature coming around midday. This is the 11 o'clock temp at 62. We normally, this time of year, top out around 3 or 3:30. You know, in the summer, it's more like 4:30 or so that we see the highest temperatures, maybe 4:15 to 4:30. But now, as we get into this late fall time period, it's a little bit earlier in the day. But today, that high comes around 11 as the winds shift. Cooler air will pump in later this afternoon. Now, we're going to break down in a lot more detail the forecast over the next few days. But I wanted to look ahead to the weekend because there is a good chance for showers Saturday earlier in the day. Sunday looks to be pretty nice, low risk of a stray shower. Temperatures are going to be warmer again as we get into Saturday, a little cooler on Sunday. Question is, if we've got rain on Saturday and then drier conditions on Sunday, when do we dry out? Because there's a big event going on Saturday evening. We're talking about the Grand Illumination Parade. And right now, some good news if you are one of the tens of thousands of people that turn out for the parade all across Hampton Roads. You know, you line the streets throughout downtown Norfolk. It is a great time. We're looking at mostly cloudy skies and just a slight chance for a shower into the evening. Yesterday and the day before, it was looking like we had a pretty good chance for scattered wet weather into the evening. Now it looks like just a slight chance. Those chances going down as the models are speeding up the arrival and the exit of that precip. So hopefully for the parade goers, you do have a better evening to enjoy the Grand Illumination and the parade. Temperatures in the lower 50s. That is one of the great holiday traditions across Hampton Roads. Today, we are taking part in another tradition that means so much to help folks out. Today is Adopt an Angel Day here at 13 News Now. We're partnering with the Salvation Army Angel Tree program to bring the magic of the holidays to kids in our region. All you have to do is scan that QR code on your screen to donate. No amount is too small. It is so good to get your support, and it makes such a difference in the lives of so many. If you're able to, we do greatly appreciate you supporting our Angel Tree program with the Salvation Army. Let's take a look right now at the forecast and talk about some showers down to the south. We've had the wet weather kind of scattered across northeast North Carolina. It is winding down. The last of these showers now becoming more isolated. We're getting the sunshine across the south side, really turning out to be nice. There's that front sagging south. Behind that front, the winds shift to the north and the cooler weather set to move in as we get into the afternoon. Now, as we take a closer look, again, the clouds down south, the showers south of the Albemarle Sound won't be much longer, and these last few sprinkles will be out, and we will see that sunshine even down to the south. But south of the Albemarle, we do have some scattered showers. Washington, Terrell, Dare counties still seeing it, and you'll see a little bit still perhaps passing there at the Outer Banks. Most of the area, though, in much better shape, and this is a trend that will continue this morning. So as those clouds thin out, plenty of sunshine for us through the late morning and into the early to middle part of the afternoon. By late afternoon, around 4 o'clock, a little bit of cloud cover starts to move down from the north across the eastern shore. By the evening, skies mainly clear to partly cloudy, but clouds on the increase overnight. It'll be mostly cloudy to variably cloudy. Tomorrow, a decent amount of cloud cover. And then as we look ahead to our Friday, we're still looking at a lot of cloud cover. But what I wanted to show you, the model's kind of bringing in a few sprinkles early on Friday. Not heavy rain, but the chances for isolated showers will be out there for Friday morning through about midday. That'll wind down. The afternoon Friday and into the early evening look really good. Off to the north, there might be a few showers. We're talking areas from Richmond over to West Point, Melfa, most of the peninsula, south side, and northeast North Carolina still in great shape. Then we get that better chance for showers coming up on Saturday. Out on the water today, small craft advisory going up on the bay as we get into the afternoon. You can see the winds picking up from the north, 10 to 15, gusting to 20 knots out on the bay. Waves only 1 to 2 feet. It's really not that bad. We just need folks to use extra caution, and small craft advised to stay in port. Highs today, low 60s, and again, normal is 61, so very close to average today. A little bit warmer, mid 60s inland, plenty of sunshine. We'll take it. Highs come earlier in the day, around midday, and then fall off later this afternoon. Low 60s for the peninsula, the middle peninsula over to the eastern shore, mid to upper 50s, and down across North Carolina, low 60s, those showers winding down at the Outer Banks, more sunshine coming up, but you see those rain symbols because we have seen a few lingering showers this morning. It'll get better down there as well. All right, you take a look at tonight's forecast. A low near 47. We'll see mid-40s inland. Increasing clouds overnight. It will be cool. Tomorrow, 58. That's the high, and that high a little bit below average. Mostly cloudy skies. Here's the 7-day forecast. Your weekend is in view. As I mentioned, tomorrow mostly cloudy but dry. That shower possible in the morning, light activity. Better chances for scattered wet weather on Saturday. It now looks like that's going to be a little earlier in the day, hopefully drier for the evening in the grand illumination. Sunday, partly cloudy, just a slight chance of a sprinkle. Monday looks great, and Tuesday, again, a slight risk for a stray sprinkle. Want to remind you, you can always get the latest news, traffic, and weather on the go with the 13 News Now mobile app. Scan that QR code on your screen, and you'll be able to download the 13 News Now app for free. It's always available there. Great resource, available on the App Store and Google Play. You'll get your news, your weather, your traffic updates wherever you are. And whenever there's anything pressing, you'll find out about it from the 13 News Now news team. Want to thank you for finding us here on the Weather Desk, and just encourage you, again, help us spread the word when you find us here on YouTube. Let others know that, hey, we're doing this every single weekday morning at 9 o'clock. I've been doing it now for about 13 months or so. Our audience has grown. We've had a lot of views, and again, a really good presence here on our 13 News Now Plus. But the more audience we get, the more resources we get, and the more availability to bring in other experts and to do some other things. We will continue to expand the Weather Desk and continue to bring you the top weather headlines from not only across the region, but across the country, around the world, and even beyond that. We get into space weather and we talk climate, a lot of good stuff. Thank you so much for joining us. I do appreciate it. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller. We'll see you again next time.